Hey, church, thank you for joining me this morning as we continue to journey through the book of Psalms. Today we will look at Psalm 27, and I'm going to share with you two things that really spoke to me. I'm not going to read the whole psalm to you, but let's begin reading from verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? What a great verse to start our Saturday morning with. You see David writing this with so much of confidence, so much of trust in his Lord, his God, and saying, whom shall I fear? In the verses down later, he says in verse 3, though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Sometimes you wonder, how can David be this confident? There's a war that is happening right outside his window. He says people are waiting to tear his flesh apart and devour him. And yet he says, I will remain confident. Whom should I fear? And I'm always inspired by David. And this verse really just inspires confidence in me. And I'm hoping that one day I will have this kind of a confidence that David has, saying, no matter what happens around me. Imagine a war happening and David says, I don't care. I will not be afraid. And you might be wondering, how does David do this? Where does he draw his strength from? Immediately in his psalm, he responds to it in verse 4. He says, one thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. You know, one thing that David knew, and he knew for certain, that no matter what happens in the world outside, he knew that his priority lies in spending time with God. Is to devoting his time in seeking him, is to gaze in his beauty. And I think that is where he draws his strength from. The more he spent time, no matter what the situation called him, no matter how busy he was or how free he was, he said, no matter what happens around me, the one thing that I'm very, very clear, I put this as my highest priority, is spending my time with God. And maybe that's what you and I should take away from this first few verses, is that we need to be more disciplined. We need to seek him more. We need to gaze in God's beauty. And however that you may translate that to, gaze in his beauty of his presence. Maybe go out and shake things up a little bit. Maybe play a worship playlist, or go and watch the sunset. Go to your garden and look at those beautiful blossoms and just gaze in his creation, gaze in his beauty, and just worship him. Just gaze in his beauty through the day. And that's where he takes his unwavering confidence from. If you and I want to stand up one day and say, I am not afraid, whom shall I fear? Then this is the answer that David says. He says, seek his face, gaze on the beauty of the Lord. The second thing that I want to share with you this morning is, again, towards the end of this psalm. In verse 13, he says, I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. He repeats this word wait 2 times. If there's one person who can talk about waiting, it's David. As you all know, David was anointed as a king when he was 16, but when he was appointed as the king of all Israel, he was 37. He waited for more than 20 years to become a king of Israel. He knows a thing or two about waiting. And he says, if you really want to have that strong confidence, wait. Just be patient. Just stay in there. When I was reading this verse, it reminded me of my old photography days. For those who don't know, I'm a photographer and a filmmaker, and I do this for a living. And I picked up my first camera 20 years back. And it was back in the days of manual cameras, where you put a film roll inside and you take pictures using a SLR. And it was one of those exciting days, because you didn't have any LCD screens where you can quickly look into your pictures like how we have in your digital phones and digital cameras these days. So you wouldn't know how the photo turns out, whether the focus is right, whether the exposure is perfect, whether the action, the eyes, everything is all lit up. You had no clue. You just take the image, finish those shots, hope and pray to God that when you develop it, that the image turns out fine. So once that roll is done, you quickly, I used to quickly go to this place, to the studio, and there's this place called the Darkroom. And in this dark room, this negative is put into an apparatus, an optical apparatus, and then light is sent through it, and underneath we put this photographic paper. And when light goes through the negative and it exposes the chemicals on that paper, slowly the images form. And when the image forms, there's an excitement that creeps up. Slowly you see those lines forming and those blacks popping up, and there's that thrill, that excitement. Slowly the image is forming, and as a young kid, you try to like quickly take the paper out, and the person, the photographer used to be with me. He used to say, "Wait, be patient. Let the formation, let that developing happen. Just be patient." And as photographers, we have this technique called dodging and burning. Basically, dodging is not allowing light into certain areas, and you want to keep it that way, or slightly underexpose it. And burning is to allow light more on that specific area and exposing it more, so that there's more contrast, more burn in it. And this is a technique that we photographers use, so that when the image comes out, there's a nice balance of contrast and details and shadows and light. Maybe for you and I, we are going through a dark room process where God is trying to, through His light, He is the light, right? So God is, permeating through the apparatus, and then He's exposing certain things in life. Maybe God is dodging or burning certain areas in your life. What I'm trying to say is, maybe God is allowing you to slow down some things. Maybe take a step back, reel back certain areas in your life, or He's burning certain areas where He's exposing more of these areas in your life, so that He wants to operate in those areas more details to come out. Maybe you and I are going through that darkroom process, and we need to allow God to develop. We need to allow the master craftsman, the master artist, to develop us, to let Him work in us, so that once we are done, we are that perfect image. And this is not fast. We are in a generation where everything is fast. We like everything fast. We hate waiting. And I come from a country that is notorious for not waiting. If you've ever been to India, you know what I'm talking about, our traffic. And all of us, we hate waiting. We want everything quick. And the thing about this process, the developing process in the dark room, is it takes time. It takes time through the night. It takes time, and it has to dry up. And then once it's ready, it's worthy to be shown outside. Christine Kane, in one of her preachers, she said this. She said, when man discovers you, or rather when man develops you, when man discovers you, man can destroy you. But when God discovers you, no one can destroy you. And this is the confidence that David had. He knew that God developed him over the course of time, over 20 years. Over the time, even when he was a small boy facing the giants, and over the course of his years and through different examples and different trials in his life, David knew, he had this unwavering confidence in God, because he allowed God to work in him. He allowed God to work in him over the years. So this is my prayer for you this morning, is that you allow God to work in you. Let God burn those areas. Let God dodge those areas in your life, so that you and I can stand up and boldly say, whom shall I fear? Whom shall I be afraid of? Because the Lord is our light, and the Lord is our salvation. I hope this Psalm 27 really encourages you. There's more to this Psalm that I don't have the time to cover. But if whatever that God has been speaking to you, share it in the comments below, so we can all grow together and share with one another. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow for Psalm 28.